anyway. Good afternoon, everyone. To those of you here in Europe, the same place as we are here in Geneva, good morning and good evening to others in other parts of the world as well. Thank you all very much for joining us again for this informal webinar on the meeting of experts on cooperation and assistance, MX1 as we know it. I would just like to briefly run through some of the rules of the road for this meeting. You will all no doubt be familiar with this kind of thing by now after having attended so many online meetings over the past year and a half, but just for those of you who would like to engage in the discussion once we've heard from all of the speakers today, you can either raise your hand using the Zoom platform that we're using for this webinar today if you want to take the floor actively. You can either, you can alternatively send a message in writing through using the chat function as well, and we will try and get as many of those questions answered as possible as well. As is the case with all of these meetings, please can I kindly request you all, when you are not speaking, to have your microphones muted so we don't get echo and feedback, or that the speakers don't get interrupted when they're giving their presentations. And also just to note that the webinar will be recorded. It will be made available, the recording itself will be made available afterwards, and the presentations will also be made available online with the consent of the presenters as well. One of my colleagues has just this minute posted the link in the chat for this webinar as to where you would be able to find the recording and the presentations after this webinar as well. So that's it from me, Daniel Feeks, Chief of the Implementation Support Unit here in Geneva. I would now very happy to hand the floor over to Mr. Kimmo Laukkanen from the Permanent Mission of Finland here in Geneva, who is the chair of the Meeting of Experts on Cooperation and Assistance. Kimmo, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good morning, good evening. I hope you can hear me well. Let me start by welcoming you to this MX1 webinar, in which we will informally discuss the topics to be considered by the Meeting of Experts on Coordination and Assistance, with a particular focus on strengthening cooperation and assistance under Article 10. Before moving forward, I would like to thank all of you for supporting my work as a chair of the MX1. I feel privileged to enjoy working with my skilled colleagues as other MX chairs, and we all work under the able guidance of our MSP chair, Ambassador Mailu of Kenya. Please allow me also express my appreciation to the PwC Implementation Support Unit for organizing this virtual webinar, and to all distinguished speakers for agreeing to contributing to our discussions today. The PwC upholds the norms against biological weapons, while also providing a multilateral framework within we can collaborate and develop common strategies. This webinar is part of the second series of PwC MX webinars, co-organized by the MX chairs and the PwC ISU to enable informal discussions on topics to be considered by the MXs, and thus to prepare for and contribute to a successful outcome of the 9th review conference. As I have already said in many occasions, I believe that discussions within MX1 are especially pertinent given the current context. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has not only illustrated the great importance of health systems preparedness the current cooperation assistance systems available. This topic, more than any other, promotes the principle of leaving no one behind. And the experience from previous and current public health crises like Ebola and COVID-19 also underlines the virtual interface between health and security. Moreover, allow me to reiterate that PwC in general, especially its Article 10, contributes to achieving 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Indeed, PwC in Article 10 strongly intersect with CDSG 3 on good health and well-being and number 16 on peace, justice and security, among others. Excellence delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the pandemic has taught us that strengthening national and global networks to rapidly identify and mitigate biological risks through enhanced cooperation constitutes a crucial objective. In that perspective, all our four speakers today will share with us their initiatives and activities that in one way or another are further strengthening capacity building, promoting networks, fostering regional and cross-regional partnerships, and contribute to supporting the objectives of the provision of Article 10 of the Convention. Excellencies, distinguished participants, without further ado, let me introduce our first two speakers today. Today we welcome two co-chairs of the Bilateral Security Sub-Working Group of the Global Partnership Against Spread of Weapons and Materials of Mass Destruction, Professor David Harbour and Mr. Trevor Smith. Professor Harbour is the Managing Director of the Harbour Public Health Consulting Limited and Senior Consulting Fellow at the Chatham House Centre of Global Health Security. Mr. Smith is the Senior Program Manager for Biological and Chemical Security and UNSCR 1540 implementation within the Weapons that Threat Reduction Program at Global Affairs Canada. Today, they will make a presentation on the Global Partnership Signature Initiative to mitigate biological threats in Africa. Professor Harbour and Mr. Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hello everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here and able to speak with you all, even though it's virtually once again today. I'm here, as the Chair has just said, with my co-chair and good friend Trevor Smith from Global Affairs Canada, as part of the Global Partnership work this year under the UK presidency. And Trevor's going to say a little bit more about the Global Partnership and talk about the Signature Initiative. And I'm going to say something about a particular piece of work within that area that Chatham House was asked to conduct a little while ago, funded by Global Affairs Canada. And I'll come on to that. I'm conscious that we don't have a huge amount of time. So all I really want to say is that this Signature Initiative that you're going to hear about really is a priority. It's one of the key priorities under the UK presidency this year. There's a huge amount of interest in this work. And as you just said yourself, Chair, the importance, if ever we needed a reminder, the importance of this work is fully demonstrated by the current pandemic. But of course, it goes much, much further than that. And we have many, many different initiatives already underway. And what we would like to do is pull these initiatives together as far as we possibly can to try and get more than the sum of the parts. So much energy in the system, so much great work that's being done. And I know you're all familiar with much of it. The only other point I'd like to make before I hand over to Trevor is that we've been very careful. It's something that Trevor and I have discussed many, many times before over recent years, that in order to be able to achieve our collective goals, the word collective is important. And this is really the heart of this initiative is our real partnership with Africa and with our African partners. I don't want to say any more at this stage, and I'll come back and say a few words after Trevor's spoken with you about the Signature Initiative. So over to you, Trevor. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, David. Thank you, Kimo. Thank you, colleagues at the BTWC, for setting up this important event and for giving us the opportunity to say a few words. I'm going to spend almost exactly 5 minutes here, which is the time we were allotted, just to provide an introduction to this new Signature Initiative. But before doing that, let me just provide an introduction to the Global Partnership, realizing that it may not be as familiar to some as to others. The Global Partnership Against the Spread of Weapons and Materials of Mass Destruction is approaching its 19th anniversary. It was set up by the then G8 at the Kananaskis Summit in Canada in 2002 in response to the terror attacks of September 11, 2001 in the United States. And its goal was to prevent terrorists and states of proliferation concern from acquiring and using weapons of mass destruction. Over the years, our initiative has done a tremendous amount of work to support the objectives of the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention and Article 10, capacity building in particular. I would note that in 2018, for example, our community, which is still G7 led, but now includes 30 countries plus the European Union, delivered more than 100 biological capacity building projects in every corner of the world that were valued at more than 280 million euros. So I hope that gives you a sense that this is a weighty initiative. And we are trying to apply that weight now in a collective fashion in Africa. Now, we all know that biological threats in Africa are unique and they present many different challenges. And the Global Partnership has been working hard in Africa for many years. So this isn't our first attempt to engage in Africa. What's different, though, is the way that we are trying to do it as a collective community. To date, many of us, Canada, the United States, Germany, Netherlands, the United Kingdom, the list goes on, have been working in Africa doing very good work that was represented in these projects that I alluded to earlier. The problem is there wasn't any connective tissue. We were all following the same principles. In the Global Partnership, we are guided by what we call our biosecurity deliverables, which outline what it is that we are trying to do to support the objectives of the Global Partnership. And that includes Deliverable 4, which is about strengthening the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. But following common principles isn't the same as following a shared plan. And when we looked back at the early days of the Global Partnership, where our initiative really excelled, the work that we did in the former Soviet Union and in Russia in particular, in close collaboration with the Russian Federation, we worked on big things, construction of multi-billion-dollar chemical weapon destruction facilities that supported the Russian Federation to destroy its chemical weapon stockpiles, reemployment of former weapons scientists, destruction of more than 180 nuclear-powered submarines. This required collective commitment and collective programming. So that's the playbook that we have taken to Africa now with this new Signature Initiative. Critically, we are doing this in the closest collaboration with our partners from Africa. From the very beginning, when we started talking about this, we engaged in a discussion with our partners in Africa, led by the Africa Centers for Disease Control, and many of the expert partners that we have in countries across the continent. Animal health and human health, we're trying to bring under one tent all of the aspects of biological threat reduction that are relevant to our community and that are priorities for African partners. And this point is absolutely critical. The Global Partnership is not something that is done to countries. It is something that is done with and for those countries. So having our partners at the table is essential. And we are in the process now of setting up working groups for the 4 pillars that I'll speak on very briefly in a moment. Each one of those working groups is going to be led by a member of the Global Partnership and a member from Africa. And the individuals who are in that group will be a cross-section of expertise from Africa and from the Global Partnership community. So what are we going to work on? Well, as I said, we've identified 4 pillars. One is on biosafety and biosecurity. Regrettably, I don't have time with this initial presentation to go into the details, but I'm sure you are all familiar with the type of work that we will do. One of the emphasis that we want to place is building sustainable biosafety and biosecurity. For too long, the solutions that have been applied in the African context have not been as fit for purpose as required. So we are working very hard now to see what we can do to put in place solutions and build capacities that will be maintainable, sustainable, and regionally and resource-wise appropriate. We are also going to focus on national governance structure, legislation, and other type of measures that are required to make sure that these things are entrenched in a country's commitments and that all of the supporting structures are there. Then we have a pillar on surveillance and epidemic intelligence. A lot of work has been done in this space in support of Article 10. A lot of it has been supported by the Global Partnership, and we are sure that we can do more and better. And finally, of most relevance to this discussion and near and dear to my heart, as someone who's been working on these issues and the BTWC for almost 22 years, non-proliferation, making sure that the BTWC thrives and is fully and effectively implemented in Africa. So that's 5 minutes and 5 seconds. I will conclude there. What I will say, however, if any of you are interested to learn more about the Global Partnership, I would refer you to our website, which is GP for Global Partnership, WMD. I'll put that in the chat, gpwmd.com. Just yesterday, we issued our 4th quarterly newsletter that provides an update on all of the work we are doing through the Global Partnership, including an update on the Signature Initiative. You can subscribe to that newsletter and find it on our website. With that, I'll hand over to Professor Harper. David?
Thanks very much, Trevor. And I just want to mention briefly, I know that we don't have a great deal of time, but a piece of work that I alluded to earlier that Chatham House in London were asked to carry out on behalf of the Biological Security Working Group of the Global Partnership. And as I said, this is funded by Trevor and the team in Ottawa. We're very grateful for that funding. I wasn't so grateful for the challenge that was presented to us, not least because it was very clear that to be of use to the BSWG, we needed to work very quickly to produce a report that could inform these 4 working groups and inform the 4 pillars that Trevor's just described to you. So we had a few months. We set out not to look at a comprehensive analysis, an exhaustive analysis of biosafety and biosecurity in Africa, more to provide a high-level snapshot, as we've called it. But what we wanted to do was go do some desk research, go to the publicly available information from the obvious websites, all the things that you would expect us to check on WHO's joint external evaluations as they've reported, the World Organization for Animal Health's PVS pathway missions, the plant protection area, and of course, Daniel and the team in Geneva from the BTWC Implementation Support Unit. We interviewed the Global Partnership member countries, a selected number of them that had active programs or had active programs in this area in Africa in recent times, or were planning work. And that was partly to triangulate what we'd found from the websites and from other sources of information, but also to update and to see what was in the pipeline, as it were. And it won't surprise any of you, I'm sure, to hear that with the full engagement of Africa CDC and other partners to help frame this area. We spoke with WHO, AFRO, we spoke with regional representatives of the Organization for Animal Health, and so on. Just to make sure that we weren't coming out with something that would really get in the way of what we're trying to achieve in this partnership. And that was the last thing we wanted to do. We found that the levels, the competencies, the capabilities in the biosecurity and biosafety area are really at demonstrably low levels generally across Africa. And that's a sort of headline, if you like, from the report. The report will be available on the website, I'm sure, if it isn't already there, in due course, the Global Partnership website. So you can have a look at this if you would like to get some more detail. And it's hopefully a fairly succinct report, but lots of annexes with lots of pulling together of the projects and the initiatives right across the board, from international organizations and from NGOs to an extent, but particularly from the GP member countries. And what we wanted to do was provide this input so that the 4 working groups could really hit the ground running, as we say sometimes. The areas that Trevor has just mentioned that the working groups are going to be looking at are exactly the areas that emerged from the analysis, this landscape mapping, if you like. So in no particular order, we've got the need for political engagement, political traction, the high level engagement, without which things really aren't going to go very far. Sustainability that Trevor mentioned, but sustainability in financing, and particularly we might say in the human resource area, and linked with that, the need for training, workforce development. These are key areas in all sorts of different ways. Multisectoral coordination, collaboration, these again are at the heart of trying to make the progress that we're all trying to make. Legislation, legal frameworks, and working group 4 that Trevor just mentioned, that is really of great interest, I'm sure, to this group, on non-proliferation. And the messages that came out of the interviews were about the need for the BTWC universalization and national implementation. As I'm sure you will all be aware, 8 of the 14 states not yet party to the BTWC are in Africa. There's a lack of awareness generally. Many countries have not yet appointed national focal points. And Daniel and the team, the BTWC Implementation Support Unit, are working actively to try and improve the situation, but there is a huge amount that needs to be done. And this is going to be a very interesting area of work under the Signature Initiative. So our objectives are to try and make progress across the 4 pillars as far as we can under the UK presidency, looking to achieve some real deliverables, some concrete actions, but particularly to build this framework to hand on to future presidencies. Next, of course, under the presidency of Germany, we've been working closely with our colleagues in Germany to engage ahead of time to try and ensure that the transition, we don't lose any of the momentum and the initiative that we hope will be created over the course of the UK presidency. And I think, if I may, Chair, I will just leave it at that point, and we look forward to answering any questions or points of clarification, getting any feedback from anybody. We're always extremely pleased to get feedback. Are we heading in the right direction? Can we achieve what it is that we're trying to achieve on behalf of the global community? And also to have some good discussion. So with that, thank you very much, Chair.
Many thanks for your insightful presentation, Professor Harbour and Mr. Smith. Let me also mention here that we will enter to the discussion during the Q&A time after the presentations. Let me also mention that the website of the Global Partnership has been made available at the chat box by Trevor. So if you are, you could maybe have a look at that. Our next presentation will also focus on cooperation activities in Africa. I'm privileged to introduce our next speaker, Professor Qi Xiaopeng, who is Deputy Director at the Center for Global Public Health, CDC in China. Professor will share with us China's perspective on how health cooperation project could be promoted in Africa. We now look forward to hearing your presentation. Professor Qi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will share my screen. Okay, yeah, it's okay for my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes,
It's very clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Xiao Hongqi, the Deputy Director and now the Acting Director of Center for Global Public Health of China CDC. And it's my great pleasure to join the meeting and share some of the examples of China-Africa public health cooperation. Just as David mentioned, the global partner is really important. And then we would like to put everyone on the same page. So today, I will focus on this 4 parts, the background, the Africa CDC public health cooperation, and then some public health emergency responses in Africa, and some of the future plan. Okay, so you may already know that December 2015, the President Xi Jinping announced to implement the China-Africa Cooperation Public Health Plan in Johannesburg Summit of Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, which was held in South Africa. And also in September 2018, at the opening ceremony of the Beijing Summit of the China-Africa Cooperation Forum, the President Xi Jinping also announced to implement 8 major initiatives, one of which is health initiatives. And the supporting Africa CDC is one of the priorities. So based on the great commitment from the Chinese government, the China-Africa Public Health Cooperation is enter a brand new era. And then Africa CDC was established in January 2016 and officially launched in January 2017. So most of you already know that the Africa CDC located in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and then the 5 regional collaborating centers we called RCC. And then so the Africa CDC set the policies and the frameworks in the consultant with the RCC. And then it is built a perfect network for Africa CDC regional coordinate centers and also the Africa countries. So there are some of the priorities for Africa CDCs. The first is established regional integrated surveillance and laboratory networks. We call the RISNet in the RCC regions. And also Africa CDC tried to establish the antimicrobial resistant surveillance network. And then they focus on public health emergency response, capacity building, especially fellowship program and training course, and also try to establish the National Public Health Institute in most of the African countries. So I think this is the priorities for the Africa CDC. And then before we develop some detailed collaboration, we think we should have to know with each other. We know what the current situation, what the key strengths, and what the challenges and what the core needs of each other. So the communication mechanism was developed through a lot of activities, such as we fully involved in the Africa CDC establishment. We joined the Africa CDC Task Force meeting and the multilateral working group meeting, especially at the beginning of Africa CDC establishment. And we work with the ACDC to draft the implementation plan and the event-based surveillance framework, and joined RCC external evaluation. And we also are fully involved in the training for the Africa CDC fellows. And then we assigned a permanent high-level experts working in Africa CDC, totally 4 experts since 2017. And then they were fully involved there with their routine work and also the emergent response in the African countries. And then between China and Africa, we convened a lot of high-level health meetings, such as the high-level meeting on China-Africa Health Cooperation Conference, this session for Africa CDC development and the China-Africa public health collaborations, opportunities and the challenges. And between China CDC and Africa CDC, we also have a lot of field visits in African countries and also in China, and a lot of information exchanged based on the some current COVID-19 epidemic information. And then, so several projects were developed based on the mutual understanding. One of the big events is the China support the construction of Africa CDC helicopter building, including the office, lab, UCIT center, and so on. I think it will greatly provide the support to routine work and the public health emergency response of Africa CDC. And at the same time, we also implement China-Africa emerging and re-emerging infectious disease project. And then, for example, the first is to support COVID-19 testing in Africa. And then we are fully involved to support Africa CDC in the development and the refinement of an external quality control for SARS-CoV-2 laboratory tests. And then we plan to do the capacity building for quality control of the laboratory testing in Africa, and then provide free PCR diagnostic reagents and the sampling swabs. And another part is support Africa CDC in the data analysis and the risk assessment of COVID-19 epidemic. The first is the online self-checker tool to identify COVID-19. And then, so the people who have the symptom or also who have suspected to contact the case, and then they will use this tool to identify. And then also use the intelligent question answer system, and based on the WHO and the authoritative organization guidelines, and they can get some specific answers focusing on each question. And then we also developed the gene-sequencing analysis platform for COVID-19, and it is a very simple, streamlined platform for them to find the result of the sequencing. And then we also, there's, thousands of COVID-19 literature papers published. So we categorized this COVID-19 literature based on the machine learning, and then build the knowledge graph, try to find some relationship, especially in the literature. And then we also use the big data-driven modeling tool for COVID-19 predictions and the simulation. And then we also focus on the multilateral collaborative projects with Africa CDC, especially I give you this example, the pilot project on building capacity of malaria epidemiology molecular lab network in Sierra Leone. It is strongly supported by the Chinese government, the Gates Foundation, the Africa CDC, and also Sierra Leone government. So we try to improve the epidemiology molecular network, especially with a lot of partners, including the China CDC and some institutes in China, the Sierra Leone government, the Sierra Leone Indian University, and we also involved all other partners, including the Africa CDC, RCC, WHO, Global Funds, PMI. And all of this work will also scale and integrate the pilot project into the broader China-Africa Health Cooperation Program, and also will connect to the Africa CDC PGI program. This is the Passenger Genomic Initiative. And we also do a lot of public health emergency response in Africa. It shows some example from 2014, the Ebola in Western Africa, the 2016, the yellow fever in Angola, 2017 plague in Madagascar, and the 2018 Ebola in DRC. And also from 2018 to 19, the Ebola preparedness in Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan. and also the COVID-19 response in Africa CDC and African countries. And most of the Chinese experts were sent for this emergency response. And then future plan, we are only at the beginning of the global health work, and we need to learn from all of these partners and improve our work step by step. So there's a Chinese ancient philosopher we call Lao Zhu, and he said, go to the people, live with them, learn from them, love them. Start with what they know and build with what they have. But with the best leaders, when the work is done, the task accomplished, the people will say, we have done this ourselves. So I think we will follow this principle. And make it real useful for others and also match their real needs. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. Many thanks for your presentation, Professor Qui. Let me now mention that my country, Finland, attaches great importance to Article 10. The current Finnish government report on foreign security policy highlights that the prevention of the cross-border health threats require efficient international cooperation aimed at developing the preparedness for pandemics and crisis resilience. And by supporting the readiness of the other countries to respond to pandemics, epidemics, and biological threats, Finland also effectively bolsters its own safety and security. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to Zakaria Ephraim Makondo from Tanzania, who will share with us an example of successful cooperation assistance activity between Tanzania and Finland, which is relevant also to Article 10. Dr. Makondo is a principal veterinarian, biorisk officer, and the head of quality assurance system at the Veterinary Laboratory Agency of the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries of Tanzania. Mr. Makondo will now make the presentation on strengthening health and biosecurity in Tanzania. Mr. Makondo, please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Kimo. In this panel of experts, good morning and a good afternoon. On behalf of my colleagues in Finland and of course in Tanzania, my name is Zakaria Ephraim Makondo, as I have been introduced. It's a big honor to me to present our work on strengthening health and biosecurity in Tanzania by biodetection capacity building, implemented in phase 1 during the year 2014 to until 2019. And now we are in phase 2, beginning the year 2019 to 2023. Next. Strengthening health and biosecurity in Tanzania is a collaboration activity between Tanzania, the participating laboratories, Tanzania Veterinary Laboratory Agency. On the other hand, we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs being represented by the Center for Military Medicine and Biothreat Preparedness. And this activity, next please, has got several main activities. The next slide has got about 4 activities which have been being implemented as the main activities of this project. If you can move the next slide. The main objective was to build capacity on detection of biothreat pathogen and diagnosis in Tanzania, but also in Finland, we partnered to develop diagnostic system based on the local needs And again, we were also training local people in Tanzania as trainers in Finland, and then upscale that capability to Tanzania, as well as raising knowledge and awareness on biosafety and biosecurity in Tanzania. Next slide, please. Project activities, as I highlighted before, has been implementing laboratory activities that include procurement of diagnostic equipment, such as real-time PCR, biosafety cabinets, and all other accompanying equipments. But of great importance is the training which has been delivering in zonal centers in Tanzania, across Tanzania, as well as in Finland. Next slide, please. All these slides show how engaged were the Tanzania part and the Finland. So you can see some trainers having learning objectives in Finland, and then upscaling that training to local people in Tanzania. Next slide. So next slide, you can move the next slide. This is all to show how we were all engaged in training and training of trainers. Next slide. Until the year 2019, you can move to the next slide. We already have formed about 5 zonal centers, which were full functional and capable to detect several biothreats, which include brucellosis, anthrax, Rift Valley fever, hemorrhagic fever like Ebola, Marburg, Yersinia pestis, and other disease of importance like cholera. But also in the first phase, we facilitated twice participation into the Geneva meeting on biological weapon convention meetings, and until that year, Tanzania had ratified the biological and toxin weapon convention. And also in the phase 2, we have managed to implement some of the objectives that include training competent personnel to operate this real-time portable qPCR, and also detect some diseases. This time we have narrowed it down to 3 diseases. This is anthrax, brucella, and Rift Valley fever. You can go to the next slide. So in this second phase, we envisage to provide activities on in-depth training for local experts in Tanzania, upscaling the training from Finland. We also do some web-based training, train local zonal labs. We also emphasize on female experts, because as you can see in Tanzania, as well as most of the countries in Africa, most staff are male. So we encourage female to be on board. So activities also include participating in biosafety and biosecurity meeting. We have been organizing this smart sector diagnostic laboratory networking through this project, and we also do most of the outreach programs, including participating in the biosafety and biosecurity meetings, as well as the agricultural exhibition. Next slide, please. So to implement all this in this second phase, we are going to provide realistic, cost-efficient sampling and laboratory analysis scheme. We also envisage to provide reliable diagnostic method, equipment, and harmonize the low-cost pre-screening method, and make sure that all staff, especially the female staff, are confident in using this diagnostic equipment and also detection of diseases. Also to make sure that we expand this engagement and promote synergy, we have been collaborating with other projects. For instance, in Tanzania, to support COVID-19 initiatives with respect to training and creating awareness. And of recent, we are now engaged in the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever project, of which we also provide technical expertise. About 3,500 samples have been collected. We have been able to detect brucella, human animal trypanosomiasis, anthrax, Rift Valley, but we have not yet detected the avian influenza, neither of the hemorrhagic fever diseases. So after saying this, I would like now to say thank you, Asante, and thank you, Mr. Kimo. You can go on.
Thank you very much, Asante Sana, Dr. McEnroe, and thank you very much for this very detailed and comprehensive presentation. And let me also congratulate Tanzania for the ratification of the convention. Let me now move to final presentation of today. Last but not least, allow me to introduce our speaker, Ms. Maya Ameneiros, who is an alumna of the 2021 Youth for Biosecurity cohort and a biochemist and innovation fellow at Panemia Tech. She will now make a presentation on the outcomes and lessons learned from the Biosecurity Diplomacy Workshop for young scientists from Global South, which was organized by UNODA and financially supported by the European Union. I believe this presentation is of particular relevance as one of core objectives and initiatives of the initiative was the promotion of the capacity building in the context of this Article 10. Ms. Ameneiros, you have the floor now, please.
Thank you so much, Kimo. It's such a pleasure for me to be presented today in front of all of you, distinguished delegates. Today, my presentation is about the Youth for Biosecurity initiative and how it helped to foster a network of young scientists in the Global South. As a participant of this initiative, I feel delighted to represent my 2021 cohort. To begin this presentation, I think it's very important to talk about the strategic framework and how the Youth for Biosecurity initiative is linked with Article 10. Some of the topics addressed by the meeting of experts related with this initiative are: first, fostering assistance and cooperation among young biosecurity leaders across the Global South. Second, to facilitate capacity building programs for developing countries in biosafety and biosecurity and responsible science within the framework of the BWC. And lastly, engage global networks of biosecurity professionals and facilitate the emergence of regional and sub-regional networks in the Global South. The Biosecurity Diplomacy Workshop is led by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs and the Biological Weapons Convention Implementation Support Unit issued. The program was made possible by generous support offered by the European Union and the Risk Council Decision 2018-97 adopted in support of the BWC. UNODA's mandate is to increase participation in disarmament discussions, particularly among young professionals. So this initiative aims to bring us young scientists closer to multilateral disarmament issues through the BWC. Due to COVID-19, this workshop was held online and we were selected from 17 countries from the Global South. The workshop brought together 29 young scientists, including myself and other 15 women, and we participate in 2 months of expert discussions and role-play exercises. It was an interactive training program, as we had 3 sessions only dedicated to role-play and breakout group activities. In total, we have 6 virtual sessions. Also, the International Federation of Biosafety Association helped this initiative by providing an interactive platform to foster interaction between all of us. This slide is to show you some of the organizations and institutions that participated in the workshop. We were delighted to have the participation of diplomats, of leading scholars and scientists, of the United Nations Youth Champions for Disarmament, and the United Nations researchers and officials. In this slide, I would like to highlight what we learned during this outstanding experience. We discussed scientific and technological innovations and what were the implications for biosecurity and arms control in our regions. We talked about synthetic biology, genetic engineering, and other new technologies. We interacted with diplomats and they show us their perspectives about all of these important topics. We also did an analysis of the BWC articles so we could understand the strengths of the convention and the challenges for the future. This raised our awareness about biosecurity in our daily work. This workshop focused on gender balance and women's participation in biological disarmament. And as a result of these interactive activities we conducted, we increased our knowledge about dual-use research of concern, and we learned how to be aware about security issues and concerns on our daily work. This is how we worked during the workshop. We were divided in small groups to discuss various issues, role-play activities, and we built a professional network to share information. We are connected through different platforms as through social media. We share opportunities and we build networks beyond this workshop. This initiative began in 2019 with the first cohort, and we were conducted and connected after the workshop with all of them. This allowed us to continue our discussions and build a bigger network. This is how we are creating an active involvement in the long term. At the left, we can see the photo of the first cohort, and at the right, you can see the photo of our second cohort. These flags represent all the participant countries. Future steps. We will attend virtually to the meeting of experts to be part of what we have been studying during the workshop. We want to work together between both cohorts in biosecurity and diplomacy matters and develop additional collaborative work across the group as publication in scientific magazines. We need to put regional and international efforts to bridge the gap between science and diplomacy. I would like to end this brief presentation with a photo of all of us. All the contact details of the participants were already shared with the state parties, but of course we will send the link with all of our contact information if someone wants to reach a participant from a specific country. This initiative was a milestone in our careers, and I would personally like to thank you for encouraging young leaders to become more involved with issues such as diplomacy and biosecurity. You are leading the way that hopefully many of us will follow in the future. It was such an honor for me to be presented today in front of all of you distinguished delegates, the Biosecurity and Diplomacy Workshop 2021. I want to thank all of you for your time and your attention, and thanks for the invitation, and I would be very, very glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Ameneiros, for your very insightful presentation. Thank you very much indeed. I can see that we are pretty well moving according to the schedule. And now I would like to open the Q&A session. At this point of time, I would like to mention that given the limited time available, it's not necessarily possible to commit and accommodate all questions. And if your question is not addressed during this webinar, we will convey to the speakers and ask them to respond in writing to you. And while transforming us to the Q&A mode, let me use this opportunity to open the discussion in my capacity as a chair of the MX1. Perhaps I can ask from Professor Qui on the presentation on CDC. in Africa about what is a priority for China CDC and Africa CDC public health collaboration in the future, meaning that what will be the focus on in the future between China CDC and Africa CDC. Professor Kui, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And then thank you for the question. Yeah, I just mentioned that we have a lot of communication with Africa CDC for several years. And then so we know with each other, and then we also know what it really needs for the African CDC and African countries. And then we also want to make a good advantage of our technique. So we have to match the Africa CDC needs and also the China's capacity, and then to set the priority. So based on all of this understanding, we think one of the priority is the lab network. So maybe you already know that in China, we have built a perfect lab network, especially for some specific infectious disease. And then so a lot of support can be used for the lab network in Africa countries. And the second is about the health informatics. We know one of the priority for Africa CDC is to build the integrated surveillance system all of the African countries. So the IT technology and information system, also the artificial intelligence will be well used for the disease surveillance. So for these two priorities, I think the capacity building will follow these two domains, and then to improve a lot for all of our public health collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kui. Let me also mention that for me it gives a great pleasure to host this MX1 webinar on Africa, because I have myself spent a reasonable part of my career in different African countries. Perhaps I can continue discussion. Before that, as I want to mention that if I miss any questions at this point of time, I would like to ask you to intervene in the discussion and guide us. But I would like to ask from Global Partnership, Mr. Trevor Smith and Professor Harbour, the relationship.
If I may to interrupt, sorry, we have
Yes.
a question on the chat channel. So sorry to
Okay,
interrupt.
good.
And it was, if you allow, I can read it out loud.
Okay.
So it's from Mr. Ronan McGurrin. And it is, many thanks to all for this informative presentation. A question to Trevor and David from Ireland about the global partnership. I had not heard about the global partnership before the agenda for this meeting was issued. Does the partnership hold meetings of all partner countries or conferences for all partners, etc.? Does the partnership work primarily on biological issues, or where could I find a record of the work it has done, please? Thank you. And David and Trevor, you can read it also on the chat channel if needed. Thanks. Thanks, Kimo.
Thank you. So Trevor Smith and Professor Harbour, you have the floor.
David, I think I can handle this one. Ronan, thank you very much for your message. And might I say, it's put a big smile on my face, because absolutely, the Global Partnership holds regular meetings. We have 4 individual subgroups: biosecurity, a subgroup on chemical security that is in fact meeting as we speak. We have a nuclear and radiological group, and a group that deals with chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear together. We also hold regular meetings through the Global Partnership Working Group. As Ireland is a longtime member of the Global Partnership, we would be absolutely delighted to share further information with you. we've actually coincidentally initiated a discussion between Canada and Ireland in The Hague. So perhaps as a follow-up from this session, we could have an offline discussion. I will follow up with you directly. And if any other partners, members are interested to know who is part of the Global Partnership, I'll refer you once again to the Global Partnership website, gpwmd.com. There is a full list of the member countries and the participating international organizations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Trevor. And I was just a little bit curious to know about universalization efforts by signature initiatives, especially in Africa. Could you give some light on how could signature initiative related to UNODA's efforts to universalization of the convention in African countries?
David, should I take this one as well? So we have been coordinating very carefully our efforts with the UN. I'm grateful to Daniel and to his team for having shared some ideas with the Global Partnership community about how we can work better together. Much of this, Kimo, is we realize a lot of the efforts on universalization and on implementation of the BTWC are supported by members of the Global Partnership. The EU, the United States, Canada, etc. We've just not been doing a very good job of working together in collaboration with ODA or the other UN organizations that are responsible. There's important work being done by the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, UNODC. There's important work being done by UNODA in relation to the UN Secretary General's mechanism. So the idea here is not to go off in yet another direction. It's trying to pull together all of these different threads that are right now sort of blowing in the wind and are not being properly structured. So rest assured, as chair of the MX and to all members of this discussion today, that we are working in the closest collaboration, not just with our international organization partners, but with our partners in and across Africa to make sure that this new initiative, in fact, diminishes confusion and increases the amount of work that actually gets accomplished, as opposed to creating further confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you very much for your answer. At this point of time, I would like to...
We have one more question.
Yes, is it at the chat box, no?
Yes, do you see it or would you like me to read it? It's from Gabriel Lazala. I can read it, Kimo.
Okay, please, if you can read it, thank you.
So from Gabriel Lazala, hi, I would like to whom the participants of the Biosecurity Diplomacy Workshop for young scientists from the Global South engage with their respective government Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I believe this question is addressed to you, Myra.
Thank you so much, Juan. I was actually contacted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs because UNODA sent all our contact information to every state parties. So I was reached because of this workshop, and we are connected. So we are connected now. So I hope that the rest of the participants will be actually connected with each participant from each country. So I hope so for the rest of the participants. Yeah, but I was contacted. Yes.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you so much. And we still have something like 20 minutes left. And if you have something to ask, please go ahead with your questions. But I would like to ask from Tanzania, our Tanzanian presentation, this Mr. Makondo on the program between Finland and Tanzania. What are at this point of time the main obstacles of the initiative, and what steps you have been taken to address obstacles of phase #1 to implementation of the phase 2? Mr. Makondo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kimo. during these years of implementation, since the year 2014, we have been implementing biosafety and biosecurity activities, including detection of biothreats, these dangerous pathogens, but we have been operating without any guideline or neither legislation in Tanzania. As you have also pointed out, that Tanzania ratified BWC in the year 2019. So after that, we began looking for at least having a biosafety and biosecurity guideline. So last month, we managed to develop a multi-sector biosafety and biosecurity guideline, of which will help us to implement some of the biosafety and biosecurity activities in Tanzania. But nevertheless, we are working hand in hand with the CDC Africa now, at least to have a biosafety and biosecurity legislation. So we are now in the process of developing a biosafety and biosecurity legislation. That has been a drawback, that we operate without any roadmap, without any guideline, but at least now we are having a guideline. So at least we will be having some guidelines and a roadmap to work on biosafety and biosecurity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Makondo. Maybe at this point of time, I can perhaps ask some guidance from ISU. If you have any questions that I have missed at this point of time, or I think that would it be?
So Kimo, yes, I can read again another question that is from Ms. Bühler. I would be interested if the China CDC is in a same or comparable manner. My question keeps moving, sorry. Also engaged on other continents or in other countries. So I believe Professor Chi Xiaopen, the question is addressed to you. Would you please address the question?
Yeah, could you repeat the question again? Sorry about it.
Sure. I believe the participant is interested if you are what you are doing in on the African continent. Are you doing something similar in other countries or in other regions or other continents in the world?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think you may already know that after the 2014, and we have a great improved for our global health, especially for the collaboration with African countries. So I mentioned in Sierra Leone, we have built the P3 lab there, and there are a lot of project initiated in Sierra Leone, but in other countries such as Tanzania, Zanzibar, and then so there's also some ongoing China-Africa projects is going on, and then but it's not. It's the on-site project is only in Tanzania and Sierra Leone. And then so we'll develop other projects in the future, but we'll like to enter the African CDC structure, and what is their framework and what is their priority, and we'll pick the priority and the specific African countries to have the detailed collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kui. Next, perhaps we can now move to my concluding remarks, unless there are no other questions. Excellent delegates.
If I may interrupt again, Kimo, sorry,
yes.
I see that David Harper raised his hand. He would like to take the floor, I think.
Yes, Mr. Harper, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair, and I'll be brief. I realized that earlier when I was trying to talk, as often happens, I hadn't unmuted myself. Just to say, going back to the question from Ronan Magurin, if there is anything that he would like to pick up separately, just drop either Trevor or myself an email, and we will certainly pick things up on your behalf. If it's something about the UK presidency, I can act as a channel for that if that's of any help at all. But I really just wanted to make one additional point. But it's a point that many of us have talked about before, and I'm delighted to see our friend and colleague, Dr. Maruta, on the call from his comment in the chat. Even today, 3 of the 4 presentations talked about the close working relationship with Africa CDC. And Africa CDC, of course, is a relatively new organization, and it is central to making progress in all sorts of areas, not just the ones we've touched on today, but they go much, much wider than that. And part of the global partnership ambition or aspiration, if I can say that, is to try and, as far as we can, within our areas of responsibility, to reduce the burden on Africa CDC, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but even if we weren't, there are huge demands on the time of our colleagues at Africa CDC. We're trying, as far as we can, to align the different activities to try and, as I said originally in my first intervention, to get more out of all of the energy than the sum of the different parts. But the critical factor here, as far as making any sort of progress, is the burden and the capacity at Africa CDC. They are trying very, very hard to satisfy a huge range of different requests and requirements. And I just wonder if, with your agreement, Chair, and we have talked more online, is there anything that we collectively can do to help Africa CDC? It's not just about providing additional resource. I know that's always helpful if it's done in the right way, but anything that we could do through this forum or through any of the other initiatives at that global level that might help just align more or to reduce the burden on friends at Africa CDC. Thank you, Chair. Over.
Thank you, Professor Harper. Thank you very much for your thoughts and for your proposal. We will take note of that. Thank you so much. At this point of time, I don't.
Kimo, if I may,
yes.
once again, sorry to interrupt. So I wanted also to thank Dr. Maruta for his comment. Indeed, we see that he's very active on the channel. If you would like to respond to David, it's with pleasure. If not, we would like to acknowledge our appreciation for his active participation. Africa CDC participated at the MX1 webinar as well, and made a presentation on the way how they are supporting African states for national implementation, but especially for legislative assistance. So our appreciation for Tokmo Maruta's participation as well. And I think Daniel wanted to make also some comments on some previous questions. Daniel, would you like to take the floor?
Yep, thanks, Fong. Again, we don't want to put Dr. Maruta on the spot, but talk more. Did you want to add something as well?
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure for Africa CDC to join and participate in these forums, to be also as a learning point on what is happening around the globe. And on what Prof. Harper indicated, just recently, Africa CDC, we also published some of the regional priorities from our consultations with member states that ran as far back as 2019. And on this list, it provides us as a region and those for global partners that are interested, the priority areas that member states have raised. So we have nicely summarized this for consumption by any of the partners. And following that, we'll, in the next coming weeks, publish our 5-year strategic plan for biosafety and biosecurity. And we see this as a platform upon which we can be able to coordinate all our efforts in improving the capacity for biosafety and biosecurity in the Africa region. As we have always said, this strategic plan will require many players, and we are not asking that all those resources that are needed come to Africa CDC, but as all global partners, we each have a part to play. And as we plan in our respective areas and competencies, we can be able to engage directly with member states and in the region. The strategic plan serves as a central point upon which we can all start off from, is a list of all those areas that member states have prioritized and the direction in which the Africa CDC and the region would like to go with respect to biosafety and biosecurity. So yes, Prof, many other areas that we need, technical assistance of experts, support directly to member states in the areas that they've prioritized. And this will help us to coordinate our efforts and ensure that there's no duplication. Thank you once again for this opportunity and for the support that has been given to Africa CDC, not only in this pillar, but in all other areas of building capacity to respond to member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maru. Thank you very much for sharing us the information on biosafety and biosecurity in Africa and opportunities to align with your activities. Puong, ISU, do you have you received any questions which I have missed from the chat?
So far not, Mr. Chair. Daniel, I understand you wanted to make some comments.
Yep, thanks, Phong. Kimo, if it's okay with you, I mean, if we don't have any more questions, we still have some time as well. But I mean, I'd defer if there are other questions coming in. But just quickly, I mean, one point I wanted to make was Phong already made it anyway, and Dr. Maruta, we just heard. I just wanted to remind colleagues that he did participate and make a presentation, as Phong mentioned, during the MX3 webinar, so people can find the recording of that webinar. And also, I think Dr. Maruta's presentation is there on our UN ODA meetings place website as well. Perhaps one of my colleagues could quickly share the link to that particular page in the chat while I'm speaking. I just also wanted to flag in response to what Trevor and David said, particularly on universalization as well. As everyone knows, the ISU works together with the annual chair of the meeting of states parties, with the depositories, the 3 depository governments, the Russian Federation, the United Kingdom and the United States, as well as with other states parties, to promote the universalization of the BWC. And we have been doing that over the past 5 or 6 years in Africa in particular. And particularly with the African Union as well. We've had a series of annual workshops in Addis at the African Union headquarters on universalization of the BWC over recent years, and with some good effect as well. Many of the countries that joined the BWC, particularly in the run-up to the last review conference, were actually countries from Africa as well. So it really showed, I think, that the impact of doing those activities and reaching out to those countries, and particularly the impact of working with a regional organization like the African Union. So we are continuing to do that now with regard to, as David mentioned, the 8 remaining states not party in Africa as well. I also just wanted to flag, obviously, our Article 10 database, the database that was established back in 2011 at the 7th Review Conference, and which the ISU maintains and keeps up to date. So I wanted to remind colleagues about that database, about the kind of matchmaking role that we in the ISU can play. So if there are countries out there with either requests for assistance or offers of assistance, please remember about the database and the kind of facilitating role that the database and us in the ISU that we can play in regard to assistance and cooperation. And also, as Myra noted in her presentation, was all about stuff that we can actually do as well. In that case, thanks to the support we've received from the European Union in terms of the Youth for Biosecurity initiative. We've had 2 rounds of that particular workshop, and as Myra said in her presentation, training a significant number of young scientists from the global south as well. So hopefully they're building capacities in those particular countries, and we hope to do that again in the following year as well. And then, yeah, also just to flag other countries which are also supporting us as well, Canada being one of those. At the moment, we are working with a number of African countries, particularly with regard to national legislation to implement the BWC, and also on the submission of annual confidence building measure reports as well. And in that regard, again, we're seeing an impact. We've already received 73 CBM reports this year, only halfway through this year. And last year we had the highest number of CBM reports. I think we're probably on track to beat the number we received last year, to beat that this year as well. So I think we're seeing an increased focus on the BWC, also an increasing interest in receiving assistance. So I think programs like this, like the Signature Initiative, like the Chinese cooperation with Africa CDC, like the cooperation between Finland and Tanzania, I think these programs are particularly important and also are having a really at the moment being seen to be having an impact as well. So we're happy to continue working with any states parties in respect to these particular activities under Article 10 of the Convention. Thank you, Kimmo. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing information about universalization and African implementation of the Convention in the continent. Well, it's now we have still 6 minutes left, and I can see that there is no new questions in the chat, unless there have been some questions received by email. I don't think so. There's been quite active participation today during this webinar, 100 plus participants all over the world. I think it was more than 110 at the peak. So let me now, Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, to make some concluding remarks on my behalf as the chair of the MX1. First of all, many thanks to all of our distinguished speakers for their presentations today and for taking time to address the questions. We have all witnessed that previous MX webinars have contributed to consolidating different proposals and promoting new initiatives and raising awareness on important issues. Over the past year, it has become evident that any opportunity to exchange views and further develop ideas is to be welcomed. As chair of MX1, I will remain open to receiving proposals on standing agenda topics of the meeting, particularly with a view to our formal meeting. Hopefully it will be now organized in August. I put myself at your disposal for informal consultations in advance of our expert meeting. Allow me to express once again also my compliments to the speakers who kindly shared with their very interesting ideas, proposals and insights, definitely all useful for future consideration. I would like to thank the ISU for co-organizing and coordinating this virtual webinar, and all of you for your active engagement. Reflecting of the MX meetings in previous years, the in-depth and substantive discussions and the large number of proposals indicate the clear interest of delegations in making progress on strengthening cooperation and assistance under Article 10. It's my hope that the COVID-19 pandemic will motivate us to believe more than ever in the importance of the cooperation and assistance. Hopefully, this will allow us to generate tangible results at the forthcoming meeting of experts and to accelerate progress on key areas under Article 10 for the consideration of the 9th Review Conference. I very much look forward to working with you and continue our substantial discussions. Thank you so much and have a nice summer. The meeting is adjourned.